Welcome to this Channing Memorial Church Sunday web service, which we've been doing weekly for the past month and a half. Since we're unable to meet together in person, it's good to be able to make contact with you through this YouTube service. This past week I finished a book that I've been reading, so I took my fingers for a walk through my bookcases to check out what is there that I've not read, or maybe something I might want to reread. And I came across a book I really liked, Thomas More's Care of the Soul. I read it several years ago and found it inspirational, spiritual, but not necessarily religious. Since many of us are spending a lot of time with ourselves, and if you are like me, doing a lot of thinking about all sorts of things, I decided to offer you another thing to think about, listening to your soul. So today I'm recapping the ideas and perspectives Moore originally presented in his book for us to perhaps consider the value of paying attention to our soul in our daily lives. Now, when I use the word soul, I'm not talking about a non-physical, immortal spirit that is said by some religions to reside in the body that will go to heaven or hell when we die. Rather, I'm talking about the meaning of soul that we can get from a close reading of the Hebrew story of creation found in the book of Genesis. In that creation story, God molded a man out of earth and then breathed life into that body, into that dust body. It's obvious from this mythic tale of creation that the Hebrews believed that the whole body is the soul, or the essence of a person, rather than viewing the soul as something that was placed in the body container like a letter put into an envelope. What I would like us to think about today is the idea that the essence of our beingness is something that we can label the soul, and that it is important for us in our everyday life to listen to what our soul tells us. But first, let's begin our service as we always do with the lighting of the flame of our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Let the flame of the chalice remind us that each of us brings the light into the world, and that light comes from the light of our soul. Balaban is joining us for this service to read some excerpts from Care of the Soul, a guide for cultivating depth and sacredness in everyday life, to set the foundation for today's message.
This is an excerpt from Care of the Soul, Guide for Cultivating Depth and Sacredness in Everyday Life by Thomas More. Our very habit of treating the body as a machine, whose muscles are like pulleys and its organs engines, forces its poetry underground. Yet, when we relate to our bodies as having soul, we attend to their beauty, their poetry, and their expressiveness. A genuine odyssey is not about piling up experiences. It is a deeply felt, risky, unpredictable tour of the soul. However many times we lose an occasion for soul work by leaping ahead to final solutions without pausing to savor the undertones. We are a radically bottom-line society, eager to act and to end tension, and thus we lose opportunities to know ourselves for our motives and our secrets. Soul-making is a journey that takes time, effort, skill and knowledge, intuition and courage. It is helpful to know that all work with soul is process, alchemy, pilgrimage, and adventure, so that we don't expect instant success or even any kind of finality.
In 1987, UU minister John Corrado wrote a song that we can find in our hymn book, Singing the Living Tradition, titled Voice Still and Small. The words are, voice still and small, deep inside us all, I hear you call, singing. In storm or rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears through all the years, singing. This song, which is actually one of my favorites, I think captures the essence of what we mean when we talk about the soul as Thomas More described it. The sensitive, deep part of the self that tells us through all the conditions of life in which we may find ourselves what is truly going on with us. And if we listen, that soul, that voice of our soul can calm us because it can guide us to the source of what underlies our fears and anxieties that trigger our behaviors. A person's soul is the individual and unique blend of the conscious and unconscious influences that make up a person's life. It is the quality or dimension of experiencing life that comes out of our actual everyday living. Now, it may sound like I'm talking about there being a kind of entity inside us that talks to us, like some horror movie where the main character is possessed by a spirit, like in the movie Stigmata, or that we eventually learn is inside Harry Potter. That's not what I'm saying. The soul I'm talking about today is not a thing. It's not a spirit, and there's no religious connotation to this concept. This essence of being may or may not last beyond the death of a body. And whether it does or does not is ultimately a matter of belief, not provable fact. Rather, today I'm talking about the soul as a quality of experience that touches our deepest relationship with ourselves. The soul's response to an event or to our behavior is what we feel when we are experiencing emotional or spiritual discomfort. And it's what we feel when we are experiencing deep joy and contentment, the kind that causes us to say, that touched my soul. We may not know for sure where those feelings are coming from, we just know that they are there. But really, the soul has spoken to us. The soul, that voice still and small, pierces through any carefully constructed defenses and denials. It will not stay in the shadows and will not be denied its voice. It will nag us in different ways and at different times, trying to guide us. That is why Moore, who is a former monk and psychotherapist, reminds us that it is important to do what he calls care of the soul. By that, Moore means we need to be willing to pay attention to what our soul is telling us about ourselves or about a situation, so that we can be truthful with ourselves and be able to live life honestly. Care of the soul means to curate our beingness at the deepest, most straightforward levels. When we care for the soul, our heart and our minds can be open to understand the roots of the longings that we feel and how they have been manifested in our lives. As Moore reminds us, care of the soul is not a psychological action or treatment to fix a flaw or to cure a personality problem. It can better be described as a sacred art, or to use the words of Plato, it is the craft of life, the artful using of information the soul is telling us to manage and shape how we are approaching living our lives. I guess it could be described as applying a poetic sensibility to our life, holding back our usual desire to leap ahead to find a solution without pausing to savor or pausing to understand the undertones. Care of the soul is allowing that still small voice that is the blend of consciousness and unconsciousness that makes up our life to show itself. In fact, we may even want to mentally encourage it to sing to those parts of our mind that guide what we plan to do and how we plan to act. Through the care of the soul, we are not going into or trying to do counseling or therapy to fix a problem. What we are really trying to do is to find a lasting solution to an issue that may be manifesting itself because of something deep inside us that our soul is telling us is there. From that self-understanding, a person can have a starting point for the healing and for experiencing more joy in life. Caring for the soul is allowing oneself to be willing to be open to all the details of living, big and small, giving life depth and value. Taking an interest in one's soul does require being willing, perhaps being even fearless, to listen to the voice deep inside us that is the honest part of our being. But if we are willing to let that voice speak to us, we can find a connection between our inner self and its manifestations and what we are doing or not doing in the physical world. We can care for the soul, as Moore tells us, by giving it time and opportunity to reveal itself, by living life in a way that fosters the depth of our being. And when we are willing to engage in such actions, to let our soul speak to us, we can know that we are at our most real and our most human self. for our time of sharing, I'm lighting this candle with thoughts about all the people who have experienced illness, all the people who have lost loved ones. I'm thinking about all the medical and emergency responders and workers who must be out in the public staffing the businesses that have been deemed to be essential. As I light this candle, I'm hoping that politicians do not make unwise decisions in an attempt to placate their political base or interest groups. And I'm holding in my thoughts and my hearts all of us whose lives have been so changed by this virus. So be it. For those of you who may be seeing this YouTube video for the first time, know that this service is an abbreviated version of our regular Sunday service. If you like what you've been seeing, you can get our monthly newsletter with all the information about the programs going on at Channing Church, even though our buildings are closed. Contact us at office@channingchurch, one word, office@channingchurch.org. And I hope you will come to our regular services when we are once again able to have them in our sanctuary. In closing, I wish for all of us in this week of staying home, or going to Zoom meetings, or engaging in old or new hobbies to pass the time, or doing exercise, that we will always be open to the grace of life that can come to us in sometimes very surprising ways. So be it. Amen.